The Girl Who Played with Fire by Stieg Larsson. Now, I was, I was so disappointed. The first book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, is iconic, almost flawless. It keeps you immersed. You care about what's going on. But here, in the second book, something happened. I don't know what happened. But, I still don't know how to say it, but something happened. There was a change, there was a shift, and the second one isn't that compelling. It isn't that interesting to me, and this is just my preference. Something about the second book just isn't as great as the first one. Now, this book, The Girl Who Played with Fire, has incredible praise. I mean, it even has the comment that the sequel is even better than the first, which I completely disagree with. Okay? So here is what somebody says on the back cover. The Girl Who Played with Fire is that rare thing, a sequel that is even better than the book that went before it. I don't know what this person is talking about. That's absolutely false. Absolutely false. The sequel to The Dragon Tattoo is not better than the first. And I think if you're honest, if you have standards, you might agree with me here. Okay? This book is not on par with the first one. The Girl Who Played with Fire has a lot of flaws, a lot of shortcomings, which cripple it, impair it, right? The Girl Who Played with Fire is a couple of steps down from the original. This novel begins with our favorite character, Lisbeth Salander, and she's only there for a couple of short chapters. She's on vacation somewhere abroad, whatever. She is just going from place to place, from country to country. She got that money now, right? And basically she's on a prolonged vacation. But here is what happens. We have a couple of chapters in the beginning with her, and then she disappears for the first half of the book because of plot. And then she only comes back, about page 350 plus. Okay, so the first half of the book, she is completely absent. Okay, and then she comes back way later on, and, she doesn't save the novel. Okay? Let's be honest. We all love, Mikhail Blomkvist. Okay, he is a great character. Okay, but unfortunately, with all of his positive aspects, Michael Blomkvist cannot carry this book by himself, even though he is, probably the second best character after Lisbeth herself. But Michael Blomkvist cannot carry this book by himself, and Lisbeth's absence is felt every chapter. Okay? The reason why the first book, The Dragon Tattoo, worked so well is because of these two characters who finally met in the middle, and they just bounced off each other. They had, electric chemistry, if you want to call it that. Now, here, this is not felt, okay? I criticized Lisbeth, in the first novel because it ends with her being completely upset with Michael Blomkvist because she feels betrayed. She kind of fell in love with him and he chose Berger, whatever. And even today, even in the second novel, she still has this temper tantrum. She still feels salty about it, right? And This is what I will say about Michael Blomkvist. You can say whatever you want about his character. He's not that compelling as Lisbeth. But here is what I have to say about Michael. This man has patience. He has empathy. He has kindness, okay? No matter how compelling of a character Lisbeth is, if I were in Michael's shoes, I would just tell her to fuck off, okay? He is trying so hard to help her, to assist her in every way possible, and she doesn't even explain why she's so pissed at him. And this guy he's persistent, okay? He's not simping. He just wants to help his friend, and he wants to understand why he is so upset, about him, right? And this is, he has incredible, optimism, positivity, because I have to say it again. If I were in his shoes, I would not bother with, Lisbeth Salander anymore, because even though I understand her background, she's a complex and complicated person. She has trauma. She has her own ideology, mindset, whatever, right? And she completely cuts Michael off completely. And I understand that why she's upset. I get it. But at the same time, it's a bit childish. Lisbeth lacks certain skills, social skills, etc. In a certain sense, despite her intellect, despite her skills, Lisbeth is a bit of a child. She's a bit juvenile, immature when it comes to her emotions, when it comes to her, how she deals with certain people, especially with Michael, right? And if it were me in Michael's shoes, I would not bother with this person, because it's too much effort. For what? Right? You give the world to a person, and she still treats him like this, like this nuisance almost. She has a nickname for him. He calls him something like Kale Bastard Blomkvist, right? Which is whatever. It's her choice, right? But still, my man Michael Blomkvist has persistence, he has empathy, he has patience. If it were me, I would have been over it in a second. To me, Lisbeth, despite being an amazing character, does not deserve all of this attention, all of this interest. I would have left her alone, and that would have been it. And I would have, moved on with my life. In this book, in the first couple of chapters where Lisbeth is reintroduced to us, she's on vacation. She has, millions of kronor, I think that's what it's called, the Swedish, currency, because of the Wennerstrom affair from the previous book. Now she's loaded, she's rich, she's, in essence, she's part of the 1%, so she's living it up. She's, just traveling everywhere. Everywhere. We understand that she has undergone plastic surgery, because in the first book, we really see that Lisbeth has problems with the way she looks. Maybe it's body dysphoria, whatever. But she has problems. She has body image problems. And a lot of people confuse her with a teenage boy, right? So in this book, we are told that she has undergone plastic surgery, and now she's got bazingas, okay? She got them titties, which is fine. And even she is shocked when she looks at herself in the mirror, and she discovers that she now looks like a grown-ass woman, right? And she doesn't know how to feel about it. But I guess she gets a confidence boost, which is, of course, all right. In the beginning, she's staying in a hotel. Basically, she's just, burning time, staying at the beach, and she's reading a book about mathematics and equations, which I don't understand why, but it's whatever. And she has an affair with, an underage boy, which is kind of sus because she's an adult, but whatever, But in the beginning, while she's staying at this hotel, a couple that argues attracts her attention. So we have a man and a woman that are a couple, and they keep arguing. And this, attracts Lisbeth's attention, right? But while she is, basically peeping and eavesdropping on this couple, a sort of, hurricane or whatever, a storm, hits this island, and the people, they hide, the hotel where Elizabeth is staying is hit hard, and the residents, they go in the basement. And while this storm is happening, this hurricane, tornado, whatever it is, as Elizabeth, is going back to the hotel, she spots this couple who are kind of still arguing on the beach in the middle of the storm, which is so unusual. And from what I understand, the man was trying to kill this woman while this storm was raging, and Lisbeth comes to the rescue and kind of kills this guy, or almost kills this guy, and she rescues the woman, and they go into the hotel. And after the storm has cleared, we find out that the man actually died, and it kind of looks like he died because of this storm, right? But a police investigation begins, and, of course, Lisbeth is questioned, and you think this is going to be crazy. You think that this is a main or a major plot point, this investigation about, on this murder that looks like an accident. But not really. It's not a plot point at all. It's just, something that happens, and then immediately afterwards, Lisbeth goes back to Sweden, goes back to her life, and nothing really, comes of it. Nothing really, aggrandizes, which I guess is whatever, right? But now she's back in Sweden, and she has all this money, and she purchases, she buys this crazy, luxurious apartment in the best part of, I don't know, Stockholm or whatever, right, in this city. It's crazy expensive, but she has the money, and she stays there, and she is, baffled by all of this, right? But the main plot point is that in this book, we kind of find out a little bit more about her backstory, Lisbeth's backstory. There is actually a prequel in this book which is extremely vague. There's some sort of girl, she's trapped in a room, she's tied to a bed, and then there's a man there, and we are given the impression or the implication that this little girl is Lisbeth, and she is being abused probably by her father, which we find out is Zalachenko, right? And we also find out that Lisbeth has a twin sister, Camilla, right? And we find out that allegedly this twin sister of hers is the one with the normal mindset, that her sister is normal, and Elizabeth has always been the crazy twin, the evil twin, right? And I guess there's also a mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is also mentioned that Elizabeth had, corrective surgery or corrective plastic surgery, right? Maybe it's because of the wounds she received from the torture from her father. I don't know. Maybe I misread it, right? Maybe I misinterpreted, what was being said. But what is crystal clear is that when she was about maybe 12 years old, something happened, which Lisbeth calls, all that evil. Apparently, her father, Zelenchenko, he was abusing her mother, beating her again and again, whatever. And one day, Lisbeth had enough. Zelenchenko had beat Lisbeth's mother into a coma, and Lisbeth, in her, typical fashion, decided to fight back, and she threw a Molotov cocktail at her father, and he had crazy burns. He lost a leg, and because of this retaliation, the 12-year-old Lisbeth Salander was, basically, thrown into, these institutions for psychiatrics and such, because everybody agreed, all the specialists agreed that she has mental problems. She's retarded. She can handle, the basic, things, that a life demands, right? Basically, she has been labeled, a kook, a nutter, and she was given, guardian after guardian. And then, in this book, we find out that all of this, of course, was some sort of conspiracy, right? All of this was a conspiracy, a collusion. It was plotted and schemed from the beginning, because we find out that Zelenchenko, Elizabeth's father, is a former KGB spy and an asset and, an immigrant and whatever, right? So he is a hot potato for the Swedish government, right? And because of this, because the Swedish government and the secret police do not want Zelenchenko to, be presented in the news as this spy, this former spy that has been, adopted by the Swedish government, they basically decide to put Lisbeth, his daughter, in institutions to shut her up. And they labeled her crazy. And because of this, no matter what she might say, nobody would take her seriously, because, of course, the general consensus is that she's fucking crazy, right? But the main problem of this book, The Girl Who Played with Fire, is, I understand that, criminal investigations, detective work, all of this, forensics, whatever, basic research are, a staple of, crime fiction. Of course they are. But the problem is that in this book, there's a lot of just police officers and people doing research in general. It's too much of it. It's actually way too much. Okay, and another problem is that we are introduced to a whole bunch of new characters that I don't really care about, right? We have the main task force that's run by this guy Bablinski, right? And he has officers, under him, which do the main research. They want to, and then we have, prosecutors, and then we have lawyers, and they're characters in this plot. And I don't really care about these people, because they're just, they're just cardboard cutouts. They're detectives. They do research, they arrest people, they find evidence, and there's nothing really out of the ordinary about these characters. Bablinski kind of stands out. We have somebody named Modig, and then we have Foste, and I don't remember the rest. They don't stand out. And then we have the characters at the Millennium magazine, and everybody except Berger and Michael Blomqvist, they do not stand it out. They're just in the background, and I cannot, for the love of me, remember their names. So we have at least two groups of characters that I don't care about. They don't stand out, and they just kind of disappear in the background, which is unfortunate, right? And it's not a plus. It's not a plus because they do all of this research and all of this investigation, and it's so, by the book. It's so ordinary. There's nothing extraordinary about it or about these characters, and I'm just like, I read these chapters, and I hope that the next chapter is about Lisbeth or Michael Blomqvist, right? So that's a major disappointment with this book, right? A lot of characters that just do whatever, right? But the main plot point is, of course, that Lisbeth Salander is murdered. No, she's not murdered. Lisbeth Salander is kind of the main suspect in a double homicide. Two journalists get murdered, and her fingerprints are found on the murder weapon, right? And of course, these two journalists were working for the Millennium magazine, and they were doing research on human trafficking, etc., and they get murdered, and you're like, hey, yo, what's going on, right? But we find out that Lisbeth has been framed by her father, Zolotchenko, and by her stepbrother, Niederman, or something like that. I forgot his name, right? And then a great manhunt begins all over Sweden. And everybody assumes that Lisbeth is, of course, the murderer. Everybody thinks that she is, this crazy, unhinged person, and all sorts of rumors and gossip emerge in the news, and everybody thinks that she is this, Satanist, and she's part of a lesbian cult, and whatever crazy nonsense, of course, in the expected fashion of the media. They rip her apart, and a lot of people believe it, because she's different. And because she's different, people assume that she's, this crazy person, this unhinged murderer, right? But another main disappointment is that there's this great hype about Zolotchenko and her stepbrother Niederman, because of course Zolotchenko is this former spy, this former mercenary and assassin from the KGB, and now he is, basically a crime boss. He does, organized crime, and her stepbrother Niederman, I mean, this guy's a fucking freak. Okay, he's like this tank of a person, and he's suffering from a condition which inhibits his pain receptors. So you can hit him or as hard as you want, he won't feel anything. And I guess because of this, he has mental problems as well, or the mental problems are, aren't related to his inability to feel pain. But he is basically the Hulk, right? He's just that gigantic body of muscle, right? And this makes me want to speculate that maybe the Zolotchenko / Salander genes might be, tainted somewhat because, the children that we meet, Lisbeth and Niederman, they have problems, psychological problems, and maybe even physical problems. So Zolotchenko's genes, they ain't right. But anyway, as I was saying, Zolotchenko was hyped up as this crazy mastermind, this crazy expert in crime and murder, and he framed his daughter, Lisbeth, because she threw the cocktail and burned him, to a crisp, and he lost his leg, and now he's a cripple. And you think that Niederman is this, even though he's weird and odd, he's still like, he framed her, he put the gun with the prince, whatever. But actually, they're not really that interesting. They're not really that captivating. They don't jump off the page. Okay, Zalachenko seems pretty ordinary. He's just some guy who, engages in criminal activities, and Niederman is this, this bodybuilder who has mental problems. Like, he sees shit, he has hallucinations, and he's afraid of the dark, right? And that was interesting a little bit, but it's not further explained. We don't go into it that deep, right? So that's pretty much it, right? And I've already started reading the third and final book, The Girl Who Kicked, the Hornet's Nest. And let me tell you, things don't really improve from my point of view, right? But I'll leave the review for another video, right? But at the end, the climax is that somehow Lisbeth, even though every police force in Sweden is, running around trying to find her, she somehow manages to locate Zalachenko and Niederman, to a farm, and she decides, I'm gonna take this guy out, right? And, in a nutshell, she fails. She fails to kill her father. She fails to, kill Niederman. She gets captured, of course, which is so unusual because she's extremely methodical. She is extremely, she's a tactician. She always weighs the consequences, right? She's not somebody that goes on impulse. And for some reason, in this case, Lisbeth is out of character. She just takes a little gun with her. She doesn't expect for her father to be prepared for an ambush. This guy has fucking cameras and alarm systems all over this farm, and of course they know she's there, so they capture her fairly easily, right? And then they take her into the forest, and a hole is dug, and then she gets shot, a couple of times, and then she's buried alive. And then she for some reason, she's still alive, even though she's buried alive, and then she somehow, digs her way out while being half conscious, while bleeding and such. She has a bullet in her brain. Even though she's so wounded and so traumatized and etc., she's basically almost dead. She somehow manages to escape this situation, and she goes back to the farm, and she kind of almost kills Zalachenko with an axe. She hurts him pretty bad. And Niederman, this giant bodybuilder, because he has mental problems, he basically hallucinates that Lisbeth is, I don't know, a reptilian or something like that. And so he fucks off, he runs away. And then basically, Lisbeth, she faints. And then, Michael Blomkvist, he comes along and finds her. And then he calls, the ambulance and the police. And then Lisbeth is taken to the hospital, right? And that's pretty much how the book ends, right? And another little critique I have is that we don't really get in-depth, detailed explanations and flashbacks about Zalachenko and Lisbeth and her twin sister Camilla. We don't get enough information about her stepbrother Niederman, this bodybuilder, which is a shame because at the beginning he was kind of interesting, right? And Zalachenko himself is just this cardboard cutout of a gangster, right? He's not that competent, okay? We don't really get a lot of information as to what happened in the past with Zalachenko and his two daughters and his wife, because it doesn't really make sense. Because in the prologue of this book, we have a little girl. She's being held hostage by some man. She's tied to a bed, and she is his captive. And I guess some fucked up shit happens, and we are to assume that this is Lisbeth Salander, and this is her dad, and he's doing some fucked up shit to her, right? Some sadism shit. But further along in the book, it seems that Zalachenko was just this violent guy who beat up, his wife, Lisbeth's mother, and from what I understand in the book, Zalachenko really didn't really care about his daughters, right? He didn't really interact with them. All he wanted to do was to beat the shit out of his wife, right? So my question is, what is this, all this evil that Lisbeth keeps on mentioning? Because all this evil, not that I'm trying to downplay the trauma and all of that, but all this evil seems to be that this guy was violent. He beat the shit out of Lisbeth's mother, and then Lisbeth decided to enact revenge with a Molotov cocktail. So if this is all that evil, I'm not that impressed, okay? It's fucked up, it's vile, right? It's nasty, but it's not fucking crazy, okay? It's not the reason why Lisbeth is so fucked up in the head and why she is the way that she is. Obviously, some sort of sexual abuse happened, right? Not right? But we don't, at least I do not get the sense that her father, Zalachenko, was sexually abusing her. So what is this prologue all about? Who is this guy that's holding this girl captive? Are these characters somebody completely different, right? Because when they meet, when they reunite at the farm, when they capture Lisbeth, I don't get the feeling that she's overly disgusted that he abused her. Actually, when they reunite, father and daughter, I don't get the sense that Lisbeth will do absolutely anything to kill this guy. Like, she is dead set. I don't get that feeling, right? She's just, I'm gonna kill this guy, right? It's not that intense. It's not extremely passionate. Her hatred is not at the apogee, which it should have been if he had, sexually abused her. So I don't understand what's going on here. Maybe the man that abused her was somebody else. Who knows, right? I'm currently reading the third and final book in the trilogy, and I'm about 300 pages in, and to me, things do not improve dramatically, okay? It's basically kind of the same thing that this book is doing. It's on the same frequency, okay? This book is not on the same level of quality and immersion. It's not that compelling as the first book. The girl with the dragon tattoo is iconic. It's compelling. It's immersive. This one isn't that immersive. This one isn't that compelling. The girl who played with fire, it goes on another path. Okay? In the first book, I was interested in a lot of the secondary characters, the Vanger family. I was kind of interested in Berger from the editor-in-chief at the Millennium magazine. But now in this second book, her main plot line is that she was offered this job at a bigger magazine, and the conflict is that she doesn't know how to tell, her colleagues. She doesn't know how to tell, Michael Blomkvist, and this is her entire plot line throughout the book, and I guess by the end, she kind of decides to go ahead and accept the job, and it's so mediocre. It's so what, right? Because she kind of was an interesting character, right? But this plot line about her job at another magazine is just lame, right? But I have to say this. There's another plot line here with the secret police, Sapo, as it is called in Sweden. And it's getting more and more interesting. And in the third book, it's really interesting. Stieg Larsson does such a good job with the secret police. He completely understands what's going on here. He understands how it functions. Okay? He really did his research, and I am extremely impressed. He obviously knows what he is talking about. He knows about all the machinations, all the conspiracies, all of the tactics, and all of the schemes that the secret police, use in every country. Okay, so this aspect, this plot line with Sapo, the secret police, it deserves an A+, because it is, it is really captivating, right? And the secret police, this is the one thing that I don't understand in this book. The secret police, decide to take care of Zelenchenko even after, the Russian Federation collapsed. They gave him a new identity, they gave him a place, they gave him a pension, and this guy acts like a fool. He just makes threats to the secret police that he will tell the news everything if they don't help him out, right? And I don't understand why the secret police, they don't just take him out, because that's what I would have done, right? This guy is a liability. He is unhinged. He causes nothing but problems for his benefactors, okay? For his patrons, right? He just, goes to bars and does scandals and picks fights with random people, right? He beats his wife. The police come in, and the secret police have to make all of these reports go away, right? And this guy, even though he is helped out again and again, he still acts like he's in control. He acts like he is in charge, and I don't understand why the secret police don't just take him out, because he's a liability and he does not provide anything of use to the secret police anymore, right? But of course, if you read the third book, you understand that Zelenchenko is, eliminated, okay? And that's a little spoiler, but whatever. We'll get to that, in another review, right? So that's about it. It's unfortunate. Listen, here's the problem. Even when I think this is the main problem. Even though Lisbeth is an amazing character, she stands out. She is, unique, blah, 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 all of that praise. In this book, when she reappears halfway until the end, she's not that interesting. She's not that compelling. She's not that visceral. I mean, I really don't know how to put this, right? In the first book, she was so interesting. And in this book, she's like reading books about fucking mathematics, and she's buying shit, and she's doing groceries, and it's not, I don't know how to say this, right? It's just not up to par, right? Not up to par. It's just so, I don't know. It's a bit dull. It's a chore, right? I don't know how to say it, but she is not that compelling that interesting as in the first book. In this book, in this sequel, she's kind of fucking around, right? She's fucking around. She's not really that worried. And even when, the news makes her out to be this nut job, and even though she is the prime suspect in like at least a double homicide, I mean, it's her reactions and what she does, her way of finding Zolotchenko and all of that, all of the interactions, all of her inner monologues. It's just not the same. She's not that interesting anymore, in my point of view. And that's about it. And another thing, and this will be the end. Early on in this book, it's kind of implied that this book will have a lot to do with human trafficking. This will be a main topic in this book. The two journalists that get killed by Niederman and Zolotchenko, they were doing research, and they were trying to release documentation about human trafficking, etc., etc. It was some serious shit, right? And nothing really happens. This subject is kind of put in the background, right? There's no climax. There's no apogee. There's no great reveal. There's no, there are no real consequences. There are no real, I don't know. Nothing really gets turning. Nothing, you know what I'm saying? Like, nothing really happens, despite the fact that, yeah, human trafficking is some serious shit. And after those two journalists get killed, it's kind of, tossed aside, whatever, right? Right. And I guess, Blomqvist and the Millennium magazine, they're gonna finally release, all of that documentation about human trafficking. But will it have an impact? Will things start turning, and will somebody do something about human trafficking in Sweden, right? For example, it seems like this human trafficking plot point at the beginning was used for plot convenience, and when it had completed its job, it was, tossed aside, right? Which is unfortunate. I was hoping to find out that Zolotchenko was balls deep in human trafficking, and he was this mastermind spider, and he had everybody in his web, and oh boy, but no, he it's not really. Yeah, he engages in human trafficking, and his son Niederman, engages in this same activity, but it's not fucking right. It's not interesting. It's something that they do, but it's not on a global level. They just pick up girls from other countries and they bring them to Sweden, and they make money off of prostitution, whatever. Right? It's so matter of fact. It's so commonplace the way it is handled in the book, right? And we get, facts after facts and examples that, these girls, these foreigners, they're not necessarily kidnapped, but they are tricked, right, with, job offers and such, and they are brought to Sweden from, neighboring countries, and, they are used for prostitution and whatever, and, it's so plain, it's so dull, like, nothing out of the ordinary with this subject, right? If you're gonna talk about something like this that's so serious, you better make it, stand out somehow. It's like, it's so stereotypical, right? It's so stereotypical, so cliche how this subject is handled, right? And it's so, I don't know, it's so polarizing, because in the beginning of the book, human trafficking, prostitution, sexual exploitation, I mean, yeah, I thought that it would be the main, the main subject of the book, but it isn't, right? And in the third book, it's basically inexistent, almost, okay? So, it's such a shame. It's such a shame. I was so impressed with the first book. The girl with the dragon tattoo was so almost perfect. And then this sequel, The Girl Who Played with Fire, is, I'm gonna say this. It's a bit mid. It's mid, right? It's mid, and it's unfortunate because it could have been way better. All right. And I have to say this, the main flaw of this book and the final book is we have a lot of new characters, and all they do is detective work, research, finding evidence, making the connections, and these characters don't stand out, right? The only real plus so far, I'm extremely interested in this Sapo secret police plotline. It's so captivating, okay? But that's about it. If you want to support your boy, I got a few books on Amazon. The link will be down below. Thanks for watching. Keep on reading. See ya.